He built the bomb. Then he spent the rest of his life explaining why people had it wrong. J. Robert Oppenheimer directed the Manhattan Project. He oversaw the first nuclear weapon test on July 16, 1945, in New Mexico. 6 weeks later, 2 bombs fell on Japan. The public learned one thing from that moment: nuclear means destruction. Oppenheimer knew something different. The same atom that leveled Hiroshima could power a city for a year. The science was identical. The choice was human. Most people never separated the two. That confusion is still costing lives today. The first mistake people make is treating nuclear energy and nuclear weapons as the same object. They share a source. They do not share a purpose. A kitchen knife and a scalpel are both made of steel. One belongs in surgery, one belongs in a drawer. The atom is the steel. What humans build with it is the decision. Oppenheimer understood this in 1945. He pushed immediately for an international body to separate the two. The Acheson-Lilienthal report, authored chiefly by Oppenheimer, proposed an international atomic development authority that would own all fissionable material and direct atomic power plants toward peaceful energy production. He was not being idealistic, he was being precise. Today, 440 nuclear power plants operate across 32 countries. They produce more than 10% of the world's electricity. Not one of them has produced a nuclear weapon. The International Atomic Energy Agency verifies this through a system of safeguards that Oppenheimer's own framework helped inspire. The bomb and the plant are different machines. That is the first thing to understand. The second mistake is believing nuclear energy is uniquely dangerous. 2 accidents defined public perception: Chernobyl, 1986, Fukushima, 2011. Say either word in a room and the air changes. People picture radiation clouds, abandoned cities, generational illness. Now look at the numbers. Nuclear energy has caused fewer than 2,750 deaths across its entire history of commercial energy production. Fossil fuels kill 8.7 million people every year through air pollution alone. That is not a typo. Every year. A 2007 European study calculated the death rate per unit of energy produced. Nuclear averaged 0.012 deaths per terawatt-hour. Coal averaged 0.12 deaths per terawatt-hour. Coal kills at 10 times the rate. Nuclear has the lowest mortality rate of any energy source on Earth, 90 deaths per trillion kilowatt-hours. That number already includes Chernobyl and Fukushima. Chernobyl was a management failure, dressed up as a technology failure. The RBMK 1000 reactor used there was considered outdated and unsafe even by the standards of its time. On the night of the accident, undertrained staff removed all control rods from the core simultaneously. That caused an uncontrolled chain reaction. Temperatures spiked, explosions followed. Then the Soviet government delayed evacuation, prolonging exposure for thousands of people in the surrounding area. The lesson from Chernobyl is not that nuclear energy kills. The lesson is that incompetent operators, bad reactor design, and a government more concerned with its image than its citizens will produce a disaster in any industry. 31 people died as a direct result of the accident. The World Health Organization estimates an upper bound of 4,000 premature cancer deaths over subsequent decades. Those deaths are real. They're also a fraction of what a single coal plant produces in air pollution, deaths over the same period. Fukushima tells a different story. The reactor technology was modern. Safety systems were functional. On March 11, 2011, a magnitude 9.1 earthquake struck Japan's Pacific coast. The reactors shut down automatically, exactly as designed. Then the tsunami hit. It destroyed the backup generators that powered the cooling systems. 3 cores melted over 3 days. The Japanese government recorded 1 direct death from radiation exposure. 1. Approximately 573 additional deaths are attributed to the evacuation itself, including stress, displacement, and disruption of medical care for elderly residents. The earthquake and tsunami killed 19,729 people. Fukushima's reactors, in the middle of the worst natural disaster in Japan's recorded history, produced one radiation death. Oppenheimer spent his post-war career arguing that uninformed fear was as dangerous as any weapon. He was correct. When Germany responded to Fukushima by shutting down its nuclear plants, it replaced that power with coal. Air pollution deaths in Germany increased as a direct result. Fear of the visible has a body count. It is just harder to see. The third mistake is believing nuclear energy is environmentally dirty. People associate radioactivity with pollution. The two are not the same. A United Nations Economic Commission for Europe report found that nuclear energy produces between 5.1 and 6.4 grams of carbon dioxide equivalent per kilowatt hour across its entire life cycle. That includes mining, construction, operation, and decommissioning. Wind energy produces roughly comparable figures. Solar produces approximately 3 times more. Coal produces more than 800 grams per kilowatt hour. Nuclear emits no carbon dioxide during operation. None. The steam rising from cooling towers is water vapor. Over the past 50 years, nuclear power has avoided approximately 55 gigatonnes of carbon dioxide emissions. That is nearly 2 full years of total global energy-related emissions eliminated. In the United States alone, electricity generated by nuclear power prevents more than 470 million metric tons of carbon dioxide from entering the atmosphere every year. That is the equivalent of removing over 100 million passenger vehicles from the road, permanently. France generates over 70% of its electricity from nuclear power. Its electricity sector emissions are 1/6 of the European average. France accomplished this transition in roughly 15 years, beginning in the mid-1970s. It is not a theoretical possibility. It has already happened. The International Energy Agency states that nuclear energy enables 1.5 gigatonnes of global emissions to be avoided every single year. The same agency projects that without nuclear, achieving net zero carbon targets becomes harder and more expensive. Its roadmap for net zero by 2050 requires global nuclear capacity to nearly double. Oppenheimer saw the peaceful atom as a direct substitute for fossil fuels. Decades of data confirm he was right. The fourth mistake is treating nuclear waste as an unsolvable problem. Nuclear waste is real. High-level radioactive waste, spent reactor fuel, remains hazardous for thousands of years. That is a serious fact, and it deserves serious treatment. Here is the scale. All the high-level nuclear waste ever produced by commercial reactors in the United States, across more than 6 decades of operation, could fit within a single football field, stacked roughly 10 meters high. The entire global inventory of spent nuclear fuel is smaller than most people imagine, because nuclear energy is extraordinarily dense. A small amount of fuel produces an enormous amount of electricity. Spent fuel is stored in pools of water that cool it and block radiation. After sufficient cooling, it moves to dry cask storage, sealed steel, and concrete containers. These systems work. No member of the public has ever been harmed by commercial nuclear waste storage in the United States. The IAEA has produced more than 200 separate safety standards governing nuclear waste handling, transportation, storage, and disposal. Those standards are enforced across member states. The oversight infrastructure Oppenheimer imagined in 1946 governs this system today. Waste storage is an engineering challenge. It has engineering solutions. It is not a reason to burn coal instead. The fifth mistake is the most personal one. People believe Oppenheimer regretted nuclear energy. He did not. Nuclear historian Alex Wellerstein a professor at the Stevens Institute of Technology and author of Restricted Data, The History of Nuclear Secrecy in the United States, is direct on this point. A widespread misconception about Oppenheimer, Wallerstein states, is that he regretted his work. He never expressed regret. He maintained that his actions were necessary and important at the time. What Oppenheimer felt after Hiroshima was moral weight, not remorse about physics. He told President Truman directly that he felt blood on his hands. Truman was infuriated. The two men never met again. But Oppenheimer did not campaign against nuclear energy. He campaigned against unchecked militarism and the absence of international governance. In October 1945, he stated that if atomic bombs continued to be added to the arsenals of nations preparing for war, mankind would eventually curse the names of Los Alamos and Hiroshima. That was a conditional warning, not a blanket condemnation. The condition was war. The solution was governance. He proposed an atomic development authority with sovereign ownership of all uranium mines, power plants, and laboratories worldwide. He argued that a partial renunciation of national sovereignty over nuclear material was the only path to safety. He believed international law, not national stockpiling, was the correct response to the atom. In 1946, he published an article in the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists titled "The Atom Bomb as a Great Force for Peace." He meant it. Oppenheimer did not fear the atom. He feared the absence of wisdom in the people controlling it. The final mistake connects all the others. People confuse feeling with data. Chernobyl and Fukushima are dramatic. Coal plant emissions are invisible. One produces headlines, the other produces funerals. The asymmetry shapes policy in ways that kill people. The Manhattan Project scientists understood this dynamic from the beginning. In 1946, the Emergency Committee of Atomic Scientists declared that an informed citizenry was the only security and the only hope. They directed that message at nuclear weapons. It applies equally to nuclear energy. The International Energy Agency projects that without significant expansion of nuclear capacity, global net zero targets become measurably harder to reach. Current nuclear plants in advanced economies are aging. 25% of existing nuclear capacity in those economies was expected to shut down by 2025. Every plant that closes is replaced by something. That something is usually gas or coal. The invisible death toll rises. The headlines stay quiet. Oppenheimer spent his final years watching the atom be misunderstood in two directions at once, feared as an energy source and normalized as a weapon. He believed both errors were products of the same failure, a public that had not been given the facts. The facts have always been available. They have simply not been louder than the fear. Oppenheimer did not leave a warning. He left a blueprint. The world filed it away and forgot where it put it. The International Atomic Energy Agency exists today because of the framework he designed. The safeguards are running. The inspections happen. The separation between weapons and power plants is enforced. The system he proposed in 1946 is operational. The data is not ambiguous. Nuclear energy produces fewer deaths per unit of electricity than any other source on Earth. It emits less carbon across its life cycle than solar. It has prevented 55 gigatonnes of carbon dioxide from entering the atmosphere over 50 years. It saved an estimated 2 million people from air pollution deaths by replacing fossil fuels. These are not projections. They are measurements. The fear of nuclear energy is not irrational. It is misdirected. It is aimed at the wrong target, fossil fuels, which continue operating without the same scrutiny. Oppenheimer built the most destructive weapon in human history. He then spent 22 years arguing that the atom's real value was empowering civilization, not ending it. The science was always on his side. The question was never about the atom. It was always about the choice.